Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new Slipknot album, We Are Not Your Kind. Slipknot are an Iowa-based metal band, absolute megastars of the early 2000s, and during the time that they were at their height of their popularity, I was very casually into them. While it hasn't aged particularly well, their self-titled debut is pretty fun. Singles like Wait and Bleed are genuinely fist-pumping metal classics, and Surfacing for what it's worth is a really friggin' great deep cut. Some of the sampling and distant hip-hop elements are a little cheesy, but still, this album was what it was. It's fun. I also have a lot of the same feelings towards Iowa. It literally just was the next step for Slipknot, but in every direction. It was more crushing, it was heavier, but it was also slightly more melodic in parts, something that they would perfect on probably my favorite Slipknot album, Volume 3, The Subliminal Verses. Duality, Vermilion, The Nameless. I could literally go down a list of great tracks here. But it was around the time of All Hope Is Gone that I just kind of fell off completely with Slipknot. It's not a bad album, and it actually has its real high points like Psychosocial. But overall, I felt like this was a little bit too harmonious at times. And then we have the Gray chapter, no thank you at all. Seriously, this is such a cheesy freaking album, not for me. Nah, boy. Now, it's been 5 years since we've heard from Slipknot, and for the most part, these new singles have been oddly grisly and interesting. Let's chat about this thing. Album starts off with Insert Coin. It's for the most part an instrumental, and Call Me Crazy, I think it actually ushers in this album in a big way. Sure, it's joyously campy and honestly sounds like it would have more of a home on the new season of Stranger Things than anything, but it's truly twisted and genuinely unnerving at times. And it really does usher you into Slipknot's world very fast. It's just an instrumental intro at the end of the day, but for me, it really does a lot of great things. Then we have Unsainted, which was the big single going into this album, and to be honest, it's a really friggin' great metal track. Originally, I did think some of the choir vocals are a little cheesy, but I actually have grown to really like them, and this track as a whole is pretty awesome. All around, Corey Taylor has obviously brought his A-game on tracks like this. His sung vocals haven't come off this strong in years, and his absolutely vicious verse just reminds me of how genuinely dangerous he can be at times. But I think the most surprising and shocking thing about Unsainted is just how genuinely not corny this comes off. It's intense, it's massively depressive, but in some weird way it all just comes off so new sounding, especially to Slipknot. But it's just as explosive and cutting as it was in the early days of this band. But to say that Corey Taylor and the boys haven't grown up a lot would be a bold-faced lie. On the other hand, I actually genuinely love the practically industrial vibe of Birth of the Cruel. It's much bulkier, it's much more massive sounding. I could actually see a lot of old school Slipknot fans being totally into this track. To be honest, more than anything, this track is the one that hyped me up the most for this album. This track cuts so deep and hits so hard that those chugging nu metal guitars that went out of style almost 20 years ago don't bother me. And while this chorus doesn't pop as hard as the one on Unsainted, this track just cuts so damn deep. This track is just so freaking vicious. I love the little details like that SOS beeping during the chorus, as well as the opening speech here that really ushers in this track great. And Corey Taylor's very vicious, intense performances continue to be just something that, quite frankly, I didn't think he can do anymore. If you haven't noticed by now, a lot of this album is the classic Slipknot sound that's just been updated and just is a little bit more mature. Red Flag is much more focused, a much more off-the-rails sound. This track is freaking great and completely twisted. Some of the overlapping instrumentals are a lot to take in, but this track is just so exciting. It sounds like it can explode at any moment. And honestly, some of the sampling and the subtle hip-hop elements come off really great as well, which were honestly some of the things that I worried about the most coming into this album. Now, I'll be honest, most of this album I'm actually really loving, but I do very quickly want to get a few short complaints out because I do have a few. First of all, Death Because of Death. Hearing this album's instrumental interlude earlier had me really hyped on some of the shorter tracks here as well, but this track is just not for me. It's just so painfully cheesy and everything that I worried about going into this album. And Liar's Funeral really isn't my cup of tea either. It's not like Slipknot have not made a good stripped-down track in the past. As a matter of fact, later on in this album, they put 4 great ones back to back. But for me, Liar's Funeral is a little cheesy. Emphasis on a little because there's actually still a lot of great stuff on this track. I do like how breezy this is, and when the drums do come crashing in for the chorus, it's actually pretty exciting. And Corey Taylor does sound alright amongst this atmosphere, but I don't know, at the end of the day, this track doesn't hit me nearly as hard. And what's next, quite frankly, is really cheesy as well. I feel like in moments like this, they're trying too hard. This is a little too campy, a little too over the top. And while it's only a minute and barely has any words to it, it takes me out of the groove that I was in, sadly. And Spiders, late in the album, is my worst nightmare. This is the track that I honestly thought I was going to be hearing a lot more of on this album. The way this one creeps along, it's just so freaking goofy. So far, this has been like the realest and most human Slipknot album. But then this track comes in and just like makes a lot of the legitimacy of this album just flow out the window for me. Instrumentally here, there is not a single note that I don't cringe at. And lyrically, I swear I have heard better metal lyrics in a Dr. Seuss book. This is literally the worst track here. Just, this is not what I came for. And rounding up my complaints, this might shock a lot of people. I really wasn't that into Solway Firth either. As a matter of fact, this single alone really kind of made me like not as excited for this album as I wanted to be. It's not the finale I wanted to hear either. Sadly, these are some of the cheesiest lyrics that Corey Taylor has wrote for this damn album. And like, yeah, this track has a massive instrumental that's actually got a lot going for it, but because these lyrics are just so wonky, I feel like it just brings down this track so much. Like, if you put this track on, like, maybe Volume 3 back in the day, it might have worked, but this has been a very mature, very forward-thinking Slipknot album with a brand new sound, and it just really doesn't add up for me. I do kind of really love Corey's screams here, though. They're some of the most guttural of the bunch. I just wanted more from my finale. But I digress. The rest of this album is really exciting and really, honestly, shockingly ambitious for Slipknot. On Nero Forte, Slipknot as a whole just sounds so freaking refreshed. Every guitar, every drum is full of life. For the moment, and for the most part, this album does not come off a single bit dated, which is a freaking miracle. Corey's lyrical performance is one of his most focused here. These are awesome lyrics. Like, the song hook may not be the best here, and God, Corey is like 2 bars away from doing a rap metal verse at times. But it's so unapologetically done that I honestly feel like it's practically ballsy, and I love this track. And outside of singles, Critical Darling is my favorite track here. It's just so explosive, and it has just enough melodic bits to make this one really stick with you. The instrumentals are explosive, the sung vocals are actually pretty beautiful at points. And the whole concept behind this track is just freaking great. Once again, lyrically, Corey Taylor, some of his best stuff is here. Now, the ending is a little bit prolonged, but honestly, I still enjoyed it a whole lot. And the last few tracks on the album show Slipknot really slowing it down and going for some real curveballs. Take, for example, Orphan. I love just how much time they take with this track and really build up that atmosphere. The slow pace is really refreshing, and honestly, it's just such a tense track. This is honestly one of the coolest tracks here. I mean, yeah, eventually it takes off in a big way, and it sounds great. Some of the lyrics here as well are just so deep, but they're once again just so sharp. I can't help but give all the credit in the world for Corey Taylor. This is some of his best writing ever. It's also just so unbearably depressive, so incredibly lonely. Like, the angsty teens might have grown up, but they're genuinely still facing a lot of problems that they probably did back in the day, but in a much more mature way. I have a lot of the same thoughts on My Pain. Once again, they take a whole lot of time getting this track going, building up an atmosphere, and you can cut this tension with a knife. Like, I love how atmospheric this track is. Like, this would have never happened on their self-titled album, or Iowa. And look, this is not the most exciting tune. This is barely even a metal tune. But this is the sort of downtrodden and gloomy track that I didn't know I wanted to hear from Slipknot. It's a little odd to hear from the guys, and it takes a while to get going, but it ties together the themes of this album in a way that I didn't think that I wanted. And wrapping this review up is not long for this world, and holy hell, this is really a cool track. Love the slow-paced drums that come off practically otherworldly, which goes like double for these freaking hazy guitars that come in and out. And I love those sound effects in the background that come off like a freaking siren. The chorus here is expertly crafted, comes in just when I started to need just a little something to break through. Like, this album took balls to make. Corey Taylor and his performance just sounds so freaking lost, so heartbroken. And this instrumental is just like genuinely progressive. This is the total package. And this whole album as a whole, I continue to feel like they just took so much time with it. Very happy with that. And the sampling in the last minute or so makes this track and this album come off so much more tortured, which by this point I didn't think was possible. So going into this album, I had a lot of reservations. I mean, All Hope Is Gone was too melodic. The Great Chapter was way too cheesy. Honestly, it's been 5 years, but Slipknot have returned with what I think is one of the best albums in their catalog. This isn't the angsty new metal that ushered in this millennium. This is a bunch of guys that have been doing this for a while, have matured a lot, have gotten a lot of new ideas, and are applying them to their classic formula. And yes, there are a few tracks here that remind me genuinely how cheesy these guys have gotten over the years. But for the most part, this is a shockingly forward-thinking album. And yes, a few tracks here remind me of how genuinely cheesy and corny these guys have gotten over the years. But so much of this album is mature, well-written, and wonderfully performed. I'm feeling a light 8 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.